Okay, welcome to the Music and Technology Seminar at Carnegie Mellon University. Today's guest is Eric Boulanger, alum of Carnegie Mellon and the owner of a mastering facility called the Bakery in LA. Eric will tell you all about that in a little bit. But I first met Eric in the spring of 2004. He was a
Great.
music student, came in 2003, and took the Intro to ECE class in 2004. Always when I met him, I found out that his intention had always been to try to switch into engineering after getting into the music school. But a child prodigy violinist, he got into the music school, I think, fairly easily. But getting into the engineering college was a little more difficult, right? But we did get it done with a self-defined major, and it really became the blueprint for what you all are doing now as the music and technology bachelor's degree. Was a real He was the guinea pig or the lab rat or however we want to call it, for what's become the program that the undergrads are doing right now, um, in the program. So without further ado, Eric's gonna uh, tell you how to get along in the world as an alum of Carnegie Mellon, I think. Eric, it's all yours.
Thank you, Professor Sullivan. It's definitely fond memories of those 4 years in strife with being a lab rat. I think we should go with lab rat because in ECE you do spend a lot of time in the lab. But nonetheless, that was a pretty trying time for me because yes, I waltzed into the music school, but switching into engineering was took every ounce of study and persistence along the way, including a few gambles, I would say, that Professor Sullivan helped mentor me through, and I'm forever grateful. And I think part of I'll tell my story first, but it kind of uh, the point in telling the story too is kind of I know what it's like, obviously, to be in your guys' shoes right now with the world ahead of you. And, CMU is such a great place with such articulate people and, you know, brainiacs surrounding you constantly. And that's typically not the case in the real world. And, and, it's kind of easy to be in that bubble at times. I miss it too, in a strange way, but it's your formative years, and what you really have to take away with is, of course, everyone knows that you don't go to school just for that piece of paper because your degree does very little in terms of the quintessential get a degree and then you'll get a job. It doesn't work that way. um, it's and Professor Sullivan always told me this at while I was young as a sophomore, was it's what you make of it. You always said that. And it is what you make of it because you're owning in skills. And for me personally, how this all started at least at CMU was, yes, I was in for as a violin major. And then that's how I met Ricardo because, of course, the recording studios in CFA. And I was always interested in recording. In fact, that was a clincher for going to CMU in the first place because they had the studio. Um, on the year before you get in or whatever, I went on one of those tours even before I made the decision to go to CMU, and lo and behold, there's the studio. And I don't know, I can't explain it. I'd walk into studios and I'd be like, I want to be here, whatever it takes. And so by the time I'm a freshman, I'm now in CFA, and instantly I'm taking, at the time, uh I don't think you could even do a minor exactly in recording. There were only like two classes that involved the recording studio, basically. You could do like an electronic music minor, maybe, but that involved, like I said, the studio was only two classes. But you could do independent study and work studies too, like what's going on probably right now in Kresge. There's probably a student who's making, you know, 25 cents on the hour to record someone's recital. That was me back then. And nonetheless, I always wanted to be in the studio, and I took those 2 classes. And when I was sitting there, the thing that kind of shocked me was, amidst the students who were all enrolled in those 2 classes with Ricardo, there were no musicians in there. I don't think there were even anyone from CFA. It was primarily from either CS or the engineering school. And that kind of came as a surprise to me. And the more and more, I also happened to be in a dorm. At the time, it was called Newhouse. I don't know what it's called now. The one, between Morewood and what's it called? Mudge or something. I know it's renamed. It's not Newhouse anymore, but it's the newest dorm, the green building one. And my floor,
yeah.
There you go. They hadn't named it yet, so it was appropriately just named Newhouse. And my floor was nothing but engineers as well. To Professor Sullivan's chagrin, it was the little tribe of Gavin, Travis, me, Christian, and we were our little study group. And so they really helped me through as well and inspired me. I was like, you know what? I've got this music stuff down, but I want to learn the engineering side. So that's when I started pestering Sullivan with 18101. And I think the funniest thing was, I don't know if you still do this, for your first lecture of 18101, he built basically a block model of a signal chain of a microphone to a speaker. And so he was speaking my language already. And so since most engineers are a little introverted, they never want to answer questions in class. And Professor Sullivan's style is very, will ask rhetorical questions constantly and won't go forward unless someone answers it. So there's the dumbass musician in the back of the lecture hall constantly answering everything because it was something I knew, and I was all excited. And that's where I got the bug on the engineering side. And then that's when I had to do a lot more work than I thought I was cut out for, but all worked out in the end. And you'll see one of the main things that I applied those skills to that I would have never expected, which is a little bit of an antiquated technology, but nonetheless, while I was still in CMU, my in between junior and senior year, I had the great chance of interning for Capitol Records in Hollywood. And the way I got that was I called the studio director. It must have been 12 times because I called 4 days in a row, 3 times a day, and finally got her on the phone and managed to get an interview. So I flew out to LA, took the interview, and mind you, there were no interns. Like, there was never an internship program or anything like that, but I just convinced her to do it. So then I got this amazing summer where I got to be mentored by the great Al Schmidt. And that's where I really learned professionally everything at the Real Deal studio, and finished up senior year, moved back out to LA, and it was time to start working. And in my search for how I'm going to put food on the table, Al Schmidt knew about an opening with Doug Sachs of the Mastering Lab. And Al told me, go interview for Doug. Now, I wasn't exactly interested in doing mastering. Like I said, I like being in the recording environment. But one thing I learned at my Capitol time was we happened to be doing a lot of string sessions that summer. And being a violinist, it was really great setting up all the mics, getting everything down, getting sound, all of that. That's the most fun part about recording. But then when you start recording, all you're doing is pressing record. And it's boring as all hell. And the musician in me, I was like, I'd rather be out there. I don't want to be in here just pressing 3. And so there was that aspect. So I figured I was going into mixing. I never considered mastering. But when Al Schmidt tells you to go interview for Doug Sachs, if you're not getting in a car and going, you should just quit. So I got in the car, and long story short, Doug hired me on the spot. And I was like, well, I guess I'm mastering now. And it was definitely fortuitous because uh, despite the fact I didn't think I was going into it, it actually is more my personality, and I grew into it. Like, the best part about mastering is the quantity of work that you do. Like, for instance, if you were to be a recording engineer, now I know this doesn't happen that often, but very typically big bands will want to come in and do an entire album. They'll lock out a studio for a month. And so as a recording engineer, you might be working on one album for a few months every single day. As a mixer, you might work on that album for a month. As a mastering engineer, you do an album a day. And so it's a lot more, and it's more my personality just because I'm exposed to more. And most of the work has been done where you're not dealing with the nitty gritty of absolutely everything. Instead, you're getting to meet a bunch of people, and also it affords me time to still play professionally out here in studio orchestras. I do a lot of that. In fact, this week, the end of this week, I'm not even mastering. It happens. I'm on the Sony Pictures lot, and the way I got this room even was because of playing, and I knew the engineers. That was my in. And it's not typical that they lease out to third parties space in this iconic facility. I mean, it's like the size of a city too. So it really is a campus, just like CMU. But nonetheless, there's the Sony scoring stage right here, which is iconic, and my favorite place to play. And that's not me being biased. That's any string player will tell you that. And so the end of this week, I'll be playing a film. And so the funny part is I won't be mastering, more so than I'll be playing. Nonetheless, that's kind of how I got into mastering. And then now I can't believe I'm saying these words, but I opened the bakery 10 years ago. It was in 2015, and have been here ever since. And it's just such a creative environment. That's why I didn't want to do, like, financially, it would be better, of course, to buy a house, build your studio out of the garage, especially for mastering, which is typically something where you can do everything. Well, A, you do it all yourself, and B, it doesn't require your clients to be there. But had I done that, I would have hung myself a long time ago. I like being around creatives. My clients now enjoy coming just to watch me work, which is great feedback too. You have to realize everything, making a record, it's a grand feedback loop. And you always have to be concerned with how people are hearing things, what they're doing. And, when you have a client sitting right next to you, you might be thinking you're doing the greatest thing known to mankind. And all you have to do is look over at them, and they have like this face on them. And it's like, okay, what are you hearing? And they're like, I was thinking more like this. And you would have never thought to do that if you were on your own. So I really do value, we call them attended sessions, when the client is here. And so having such a nice spot like this is obviously conducive to exactly that, and more clients come. It's great in that regard. And what we bring to the table for mastering, I know with many students, I've done plenty of AES interviews and seminars and the like. Mastering, for whatever reason, still in 2025 seems to be like this black magic art. It's not. It really is as simple as it seems. When you think about it, we have all the same tools as any other studio, including we're next sitting in the machine room. But they're all the same tools. And so why do you even need mastering? And what I was alluding to before, how I do an album a day, what you're really paying me for is perspective. Like, I've got new ears, and all too often, like the most simple of basic things, like everything's way too bassy. And you just take off a few dB of low end, and everyone's like, you're a genius. How does this sound so good? And it's like, when you're working on something every single day, you start micromanaging and your ear gets thrown and you lose sight of the big picture, right? And so it's all about perspective. That's what mastering brings to the table. And that perspective is important. Like, we really work hard on making sure we don't fall into a trap of listening to things way too much, like listening to them to death, where you can't have an open mind to anything else. And but you know, the art of mastering and the business of mastering allows for this. And you know, it's not just the technical get it to the format that it's going to be released in. And I'll give you a little tour here, and show you kind of the studio, with what we do, how I do it. And then this will tie into, I'll take you guys into the vinyl room, which ties into the whole idea of kind of owning in your skills and realizing it, you know, the skills that you're forming right now, like, don't feel, you should always branch out as much as you can, especially in CMU. I don't know if it's the same thing, but like when you were full-time at CMU, you could take as many classes as you could muster, right? Like, it's not like other colleges where they charge you per class, right? Is that still the case? Yes, no?
That is true.
Primarily, yeah. So, you know, always branch out, so long as you can handle it, obviously. You know, there's only 24 hours in the day. And the vinyl project, that started at the mastering lab for me originally. This is a new system and a totally new design that I designed myself and built. Most of all the processing is done on DSP. And then the analog, what's powering the cutter head, what the actual transducer that's doing the work, cutting into lacquer, we refer to it as. That, because all of that processing, you guys can, I know this isn't going to be a technical lecture here, but you guys can look up the RAA curve. You're probably maybe already familiar with it. It's when you're cutting, it's a pre-emphasis curve. When you're playing back the records, it's a de-emphasis. That's the major thing that was in the chain, and it's a massive filter. It's not exactly this, but you can think of it as just a basic one-pole filter that goes from -20 at 20 hertz to +20 at 20 kHz. Again, not exactly that, but roughly that's how big this filter is. All your audio is going through it. And so when you remove that out of the analog cutting system, and mind you, the cutter head is on a grandiose feedback loop, because unlike these speakers behind me, let's see if the zoomy thing, this automatic zooming is annoying. How can I move to, okay, unlike that speaker behind me, which is a three-way, you know, why do we have three-way speakers? Obviously, you have a woofer, a mid-range, a tweeter, and they get smaller as they go up. And of course, the rationale behind that is because any transducer that's moving coil, like a spring, is going to have a natural resonance. And if you were to energize that resonance with your signal, it's going to take off, and it's not going to be linear at all, right? It's going to resonate. So we use crossovers to make sure that the signal you're putting into it never gets to that resonance, right? And then, well, that's a problem, because now you're losing some of the audible range. So then you make another transducer, and you make sure that it's in its linear range, and then another one. Hell, you could have as many as you want. But the whole point is you're using multiple transducers of varying sizes so that their natural resonances won't be affected by the signal, because we're electronically avoiding that. And that's what makes speakers nice and linear. Problem with the cutter head is, if you haven't noticed, there's one groove on a record. And there's only one rock that's doing that. So it's not like you can have different size cutter heads, like different size transducers, to cut one groove. So the way we get away from, and obviously, if the expectation is to go from 20 to 20K, let's say, the audible range, where's that resonance probably going to be? Right in the middle. It's usually around 700 hertz on a cutter head, and that's because of mechanical damping and whatnot in there. But the way we take out that resonance, when you think of it, think of like old records, like from the 40s or 30s, with, you know, the big horns and everything. The horn itself is the resonator when you think of it, and they all sound like this, you know, like that's that resonance that's happening between the cutter head, the pickup, and the amplifier, which is just a stupid horn. So the way we counteract that with modern records that are electrically cut and electrically picked up is, in the cutter head, there's feedback coils on that same drive shaft, which actively will null out that resonance. And that's very complicated. So in my system, with taking out all of the EQing and everything to get everything nice and flat in response, and doing that in DSP, it means from the D to A all the way through the power amp to the drive coil, through the feedback coils back to the D to A level, you're in a very solid feedback loop. And so original amplifiers for like a Neumann system, they were usually, you don't need much power either, you know, it's a microscopic groove. They were usually 70-watt amps. And for perspective, the amp that I've got powering this is a 2200-watt amp. And the reason why I can get away with that without lighting the cutter head on fire is because that stability of the feedback loop is so high. And what that gives me is, especially, you know, of course, modern music these days, that's what's getting cut to vinyl. It's not like the good old days. It's all limited to or compressed digitally before I even get it and have an opportunity to cut it. So, you know, for lack of, to keep it basic, it's kind of like you're cutting square waves in a way. And that's very hard on a system. But my system can actually do it because of that stability of that negative feedback loop, where it's literally forcing that rock to cut square waves. And, you know, electronically, for the E's out there, it's this idea of the higher power amp being able to cut square waves. It's kind of, it's analogous to like slew rate in semiconductors, right? So it doesn't yield, it's not that it's outputting more power, it's outputting the same amount, except for it's instantaneous. Well, that diamond rock is getting more G-force. I can give you, I can tell you that. So I think maybe I'll give you a little quick tour here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, I'll keep it like so. Can't zoom out anyway. Well, this here is the main room. It used to be a movie theater, as you might be able to tell. And in fact, I'll kind of come from this perspective. You can see the platforms that I even made because this floor is sloped. It used to be chairs like that all the way down to a movie screen. We still even have the holes for the projectors here. This typically is client land where everyone hangs out and, you know, the goodies and whatnot. Beer fridge, very necessary, coffee maker. So they're up here and I'm down one level. And one intriguing thing about this design is, like, for instance, in the studio that you guys are familiar with at CMU, which is typical, the floor is flat. And for diffusion, typically you hang clouds, right? Well, this I get away with free lunch because the floor is the thing that's not flat. The ceiling's kind of flat. So it's just upside down, but acoustically it works just the same. So that's one free lunch for me with the design of this. And I think the biggest thing that you'll notice is these are my main speakers. That's my workstation and the console. Well, the console is behind me. Yes, the speakers are not in front of me. And it's because the biggest impediment to hearing things, obviously, is this chunk of metal that's going to be in front of you while you're trying to listen to speakers. So, and there's these acousticians that try to do every single little trick in designing a room to make everything sound good with your speakers. And instead of doing that, I was like, screw it, just put it behind you. So there's a clear shot between my speakers and me in a chair. Ta-da. Simple engineering works. And I guess we'll show you, give you the full tour here. Here's our Hall of Shame. One of these days, you guys will get some of those. And here's the main hallway. Adjacent theaters, there's still 5 other theaters in this row, but we got this room. And what used to be a projection room is now the cutting room. And here's the lathe. This is Peter. He's actually attempting to do a master. And oh, this is exciting. This is Willow. She's right now QCing. This is a metal part. And in fact, here, Willow, why don't you take over and explain what you're doing and what metal is, and give them the nickel tour, because I'm going to be a bad seminar host and run to the bathroom for 1 minute. So Willow, take it away.
Can do. So I don't know how much Eric has already explained about the process of making vinyl. Okay, it's 0, he says. So step 1 of making vinyl is cutting the lacquer, which is what Peter's currently doing on the lathe. Lacquers are basically nail polish on aluminum discs that then go into get electroplated and turned into these metal negatives of the grooves. Actually, this is a positive. They create negatives, which then create positives, which are metal versions of the record that are actually playable. So that's what I'm QCing right now. You can see it's playing just like a record. You can also hear it. That is what it's supposed to sound like. It's just a bit of an interesting record. But so my job as the metal QC engineer is to play all of the records, every side of everything we cut as metal, to make sure that there aren't any issues, no like clashing grooves, no bad pops or clicks that totally interfere with how it's supposed to sound, all that good stuff. So we also record it into the machine here. Ooh. And then if things get messed up overseas or something, because there are pressing plants all over the world, we have a record to show on our end everything was good, and we can kind of get a good idea of what part of the process needs to be redone to replace it without redoing everything from step 1. Yeah, that's a lot of the metal process. Does anyone have any questions? I don't know if I explained that perfectly, but
How does one become a metal quality control engineer?
well, I got a little lucky in that my class toured the bakery here in person when I was in college. And when I toured here, that's how I became a QC engineer here. When I toured here, I gave Eric my card, and I gave Peter my card, and I gave James my card. And eventually Eric was like, okay, send me your resume after the holidays. And this was in November, and come like January 2nd at 8 a.m. on the dot, I sent my resume, and he was like, I guess we'll interview her.
I won't lie. I was still in my hotel in Las Vegas after the New Year, totally hungover, and bright and early that morning, I get this email, and I was like, "Oh, that bitch." She did exactly what I said, though.
So follow instructions is the best way to get a job in
Yes.
metal.
Well, why don't I take you back inside?
Hey, but before you run, can I ask about dust? And I was kind of expecting a clean room if you're cutting masters.
Oh, we try to keep dust to a minimum, of course, but it's really not that problematic. I mean, we have a very fancy. Here, let me turn this around. Here, Pete, why don't you demonstrate the fancy tool we have for dust between your legs? Well, I didn't want to go between your legs. An air gun. Ta-da! No dust. And of course, since the lacquer material is an aluminum plate with nitrocellulose lacquer that's poured evenly over it, and that, of course, is a exact method of static electricity. So it does attract dust to the disc, but you know, the diamond is a lot stronger than the dust. So, and there's also, you know, as you're cutting, you're pulling off that refuse from the disc, and so there's also a vacuum system that does that. So it would be frowned upon if you were in a maybe a pet grooming shop, but thus it doesn't have to be clean room standards. No.
Yeah, thanks.
And well, I was assuming maybe good timing to start some Q&A or something, which thank you, you already did. Anyone else out there?
I have a question. One of the things that was interesting, what you said early on, was that you do like a mastering a day.
Yeah.
That's staggering to me. I'm a novice recording person, but so I can't do anything in one day, obviously. But how does that happen? Do you have the artist with you?
Sometimes, yeah. I'd say attended sessions are probably about 50 to 60%. That's just anecdotal, but no one has to be here either.
Do you use traditional things like Pro Tools and those, or do you have some special software that you guys do?
Yeah, input is Pro Tools, and I use 2 rigs. And for the capture side and when we're assembling parts, I use Sadie, but unfortunately, Sadie is kind of on its way out. So we're actually picking a new DAW. I think we're going to go with Sequoia, but it's a little early for that. It's tax season.
How about plugins?
A myriad. We've got a bunch.
Do you have any preferences to companies like Waves or
UAD is my mainstay.
UAD?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Anyone else out in the universe?
I don't know if you can see the chat at all, Eric, or not, but
no, I haven't been looking at.
Someone says, how do you feel about mastering on planar magnetic headphones, such as Audi's MM500s?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's plenty of people who will do that. It's not my cup of tea. I kind of like feeling everything. It is possible. Nothing wrong with it, but that's definitely, if you couldn't tell from my ethos, I like people in the room too, and kind of hard to be do that with headphones. You'd really look weird. But I think that's just a personal decision. There's nothing against it. I have done mastering with headphones, like during COVID quarantine. That was a big one. I don't get the fancy headphones. I'm still a lover of good old Sennheiser HD 600s. They're open back. They sound great to me. Very reliable. You need a good amp, of course, and good interface. But I think maybe I figured out how to get the chat up here. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. I think that's just a personal taste. But I see someone asking here, do you also do mastering for digital medium? Yes, of course. That's the mainstay. That's the room I'm currently sitting in. And that's typically, put it this way, every big album, the major labels these days for new albums, obviously they all want digital, of maybe a myriad of different formats, whether it be standard and streaming, mastered for iTunes, which is now Apple Digital Masters, or high resolution. We do it all from this room. And this room that I'm sitting in now, this is where you make the listening decisions, because it's got the good speakers, everything's, meant for making decisions. The vinyl room in there, we've already made all the decisions. We're cutting things. That's what that room is for. It's a production room. And what I was going to say was the major labels with new records, of course, they're doing digital, but every single one nowadays also wants to do vinyl. So we'll set up a high resolution master that I know by feel what the lathe will want to do. And we'll do test cuts, make sure that it's really translating well on the disc. And when I do that and listen, I bring the lacquer in here to listen to, because like I said, this is where you make your listening decisions. And once we got that horse to ride on, it's just a matter of pressing go. And that's exactly what Peter's working on for one of our clients in there. And let's see, what is the main consideration for digital medium right now? Because I know for analog mediums like cassette tape, usually the mastering, okay. Yeah, well, first of all, I don't do cassette. Like, that's for the birds. That's, that ship should have sailed a long time ago. It's just hipsters who have brought this back. There's some clients have done that, but you can take my digital master and put it on a cassette tape. No one's going to listen to it for quality because it's awful. But what you're hinting at here, I know there's a lot of, quite frankly, BS on the internet about how you prepare your digital masters for vinyl cutting when you're not a vinyl cutter. And that's all BS. Just send your best sounding mix master possible. Probably preferable, if you're making things loud on purpose, maybe that's not what you would want to send to a cutter. But the main thing here is, researching how a lathe works and the quirks and all of that. Leave that to the cutter, because the main thing is you don't have a lathe. You don't have the opportunity to test things out. And all too often, people will do too much processing and send it to me just for cutting. And it sounds like crap as a result, because they overdid things. Whereas if they just sent me the raw thing, I would be in a better position, because I have a lathe to test things on, to know how far we can push the medium. So if you don't have a lathe, don't worry about it.
So Eric, I have a question. So when you get a masters from people, mixes that come to be
sure.
mastered, right?
Right.
Do they come to you in like 44.1, 16-bit, or do they come to you in like 24, 96 or something like that, and then you do all the dithering and the downsample to ready everything for the standard?
It comes in every single format known to mankind, and I hate to say it, including cassette. that has happened.
Hey, some of us boomers still like hang on to our cassettes, Eric.
Hey, I'm not gonna judge, but yes, 44 through 384, 16 through 32 float, DSD, DAT tapes. Unfortunately, every now and then a cassette or an actual production CD. That happens a lot when, by the way, record labels are notorious for, their one asset is the master. And words cannot describe how many big albums they just lost them. And there's many times where the only thing they have is like they find an old, still shrink wrapped production CD. It's deplorable, but it's real world and it happens. And coming in very soon, I don't know if I should be saying his name. I probably can't, but someone very big with a very notorious, it's a very notorious LA rock band of the 90s is coming in with a new album, and it's all going to be on 30 inches per second, half-inch tape. And my tape machine is just hiding in the corner because rarely am I getting tapes in. And the reason for that, tapes used to be rather frequent, especially when I started out in mastering, because, we're doing reissues from record labels and the mixes were done to tape. That's the whole thing. But then when vinyl started getting popular again, we were cutting from tape, and those tapes were going everywhere and getting beat up. And it ended up being that the archive versions, like they'd archive all the tapes at 192, they started beating out the tape because the tape, it's a finite medium. The more you play it, the more it wears down. It's as simple as that. And you start literally losing iron off of this tape. And with that, you lose your music. So the labels have been reluctant to ship out anything unless it was absolutely necessary. And with the amount of archiving that's been done industry-wide up until this point, it's pretty darn rare to have an old reissue from like a label. Maybe if it's tapes from a solo artist or something that they had in their garage, different story. But the majority of tape work that I work on for new albums, it was newly mixed to tape. So there's probably like 4 of those clients a year. Of
You
course,
don't get
these
these like
guys
digitally remastered jobs or whatever, where they bring the tapes to you and have you make a
yeah, so that would count for the reissues. And we're seeing less of that just because like years ago, they've already been archived to like 192, and that's the source you use. And I prefer doing that. Honestly, like if they want me to take a look at the tape, I'll line it up and I'll literally audition which sounds better. And very often the archive, even though it's a digital copy, it's second generation to that tape, it will sound better because it was recorded 10 years ago when that tape has been played 30 times in between. So, it's the one thing digital has going for it is it doesn't, disappear on you. Oh, new question. Thinking about mastering for production, are there any streaming services that you would find most of your work being prepared for, such as, oh boy. Okay. So first and foremost, it was called Mastered for iTunes at the time, but I actually pioneered it. And it was because I mouthed off to an Apple exec unknowingly. And they were like, well, can you do this? I'm like, yes. And shockingly, Mastered for iTunes, which is now Apple Digital Master, there's nothing to it past basically being able to submit WAV files as masters. If you can believe it, back in the day, you would make a CD master, and at the record label, the only way you could get it on iTunes was they'd have an intern take the production CD, put it into a CD burner just like you did at home, and hit rip and upload. I mean, I'm not kidding you. That's how that was done. And on the biggest of scales. And until we did this, was it capable and even legal? There were like contracts involved. It was so absolutely retarded, but they never could accept a WAV file as a master. Mastered for iTunes changed that in the industry. Now this is readily accepted. In fact, obviously preferred too. So that's what we did with that. Now, with all the other platforms, I don't do anything different for any of the streaming platforms because they constantly change their minds. They constantly change their mind about loudness normalization. It's such a pain in the ass. You can't keep up. I just do things where it sounds good, kind of everywhere, and let it go. If, there's times with YouTube's a little different in that list that you just gave me. Speaking about YouTube videos, not the YouTube music service, but YouTube videos is kind of like a Netflix or an Amazon Prime. Netflix being the most staunch about their levels that you submit. And normally when you're doing, that's when you're locking to video, like maybe a live concert, music videos, something like that. But that, like, they're coming here being like, I want this on YouTube. So I will do everything in that specification, of course, to make it sound as good on that platform. But you'd be driving yourself to drink if for every single platform out there in music streaming, you were doing everything differently. And so that kind of answers the thing about LUFs. First of all, when I'm artistically working and mastering, I never even look at meters. I know my room so well, I just do it by ear. I don't need a LUF meter. The only time I use LUF meters is when I have a strict specification like Netflix. And I'll give you a good story even, since I think we're running short on time, but you guys will like this one. With Netflix, they have a complete set, and I was doing a live concert for Barbra Streisand, and she was even sitting next to me. And everyone knows that Netflix, bum, right? In the beginning. Well, that bum, which is like, what, a 2-second clip or something. The sound designer, obviously, made the loudest known thing to this specification possible. Like, it must have taken them a month to make sure that this is the loudest damn thing possible that fits those specifications. Like, when you measure it on the meter, it's literally the specification. Like, you don't, if any of you guys work on Netflix and you lose that PDF of their specs, forget it. Just put on the bum, measure it, and there's your specs. And so we have to put it on the front. And now this concert is, of course, 2 hours long and very dynamic and whatnot. And when the concert starts, it's very graceful, a little bit of dialogue, but like it's all behind the scenes, like leading onto the stage. And you put on that bum right before it. And I mean, the speakers nearly fell off the stands. Like, it was so loud, and Babs was having a conniption, and she was like getting her manager to hit up the Netflix CEO and everything. I was like, guys, wait, do you trust me? And they're like, yes. I'm like, just forget about this for now. And so we were done with everything. Babs like storms out because she's so pissed off about this, but she's like, I trust you, Eric. And I sent the ref out, and of course her team can see that Netflix accepts it and everything. They're like, okay, great, all of this. But the trick I had up my sleeve was I knew that distribution had to go through Sony. And so when it went through Sony, I sent the actual master, and I lowered the bum to where I wanted it and sent the master. And because Netflix already signed off on it, they didn't know that there was a switcheroo. And still to this day, and even Babs's manager called me when it was up, and he's like, how the hell did you convince them? And I'm like, I didn't.
So now you have all the blackmail dirt on Eric. So if you
yeah, exactly. Don't say anything. For the question about remastering, yes, of course, I work on a ton, and every single instance it's just all different projects. It could be anything, from whatever to whatever, for whatever reason. You have to be liquid. And thoughts on AI mastering. You know, I'm sure as it stands right now, I mean, they're all jokes. But I totally can see AI plugins getting better, more in the sense of making your life easier and faster. And I think you guys will find as you get better and better at engineering, when you're able to, in your head, hear what you want to have and quickly execute it, you end up making better decisions artistically. And so I see that's where AI is going to go, and it's going to end up helping us. But at the end of the day, we're not making records for AI to listen to it. We're making it for humans to listen to it. So I'm not concerned about my job in any way, because for the clients that I can't share right now, that you definitely know this band, you know, do you think that they're going to want to work for a year on a record and then just send it over to AI? Yeah, good luck.
Do you ever reject projects? Like you can't do anything with it?
It's rare, but has happened.
But not very often.
It's very rare, but you know, well, there's two things. Number one, whoever can afford my rate, whoever's walking through that door, that's why it's a rarity, because you kind of have to have mental problems if you think that's up to snuff. But it does happen. More often than not in this regard, and I've ended up with clients for life as a result. It's just something comes in and they miss the mark, and you can kind of steer them in the right direction. And I just say, you know, it's not like I penalize them for wasting time in a day. I say, go back and do this, or go and work with this person instead and come back.
Okay.
And of course, those clients, when I say this, they're not going to be very happy at the time, because, you know, they're happy and thinking they're going to be done with the record. And now it's like, no, you're not. But words cannot describe the second time when they come back, how grateful they are, and they love everything. And so that's more often what happens. It's less, oh, this sucks, go away.
Do you use a combination of headphones and the speakers when you master?
99% I use the speakers. I use the headphones to check detailed things. I do have just a random pair here, but that's just mainly for checking things, or if I have to resort to like noise reduction, like if there's, you know, weird ticks or something in there, it happens.
So my last question is, you seem too young to have the Doors and Eric Burdon on your resume.
Well,
are you older than you look?
No, I am turning 40 in August, and well, the Doors was reissues, and Eric Burdon is actually a very close friend. I've even performed with him.
Yeah.
And
wow, cool.
And shockingly, he still writes new things.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We do not have an internship right now, and the way you would apply is just bug me, but I wish I didn't just say that, but not at this time, just because we're pretty busy. And you know, one thing, maybe point of advice when you're looking for internships and whatnot, is any real pro, they're never going to say no to like lunch or at least give you some advice. You know, keep your ears open for all of that and absorb it, and you make connections. You might not get an internship, you might not get a job, but that doesn't matter. The more people you know, the better for you when that job opportunity does arise. And you have to put yourself like in my shoes. Like, internships are great, and you might think, oh, I can help out and everything. It's like, you don't help out. It ends up being I have to teach you everything, and you're slowing me down. So that's why we don't do internships, certainly not as a program, but we pick interns kind of wisely at certain times. And just because of the nature of the business, like summer months get super fast paced for us. And that's the worst time to have an intern. But of course, it's the time when you're off of school, unfortunately. Like, you know, winding into the holidays where we're more focused on maintenance and slowing down going into the holidays. It's a great time for us. That's when I would be able to do it. But that's when you're in final exams. So it's a catch-22. Sorry for the bad news.
Okay, any other questions for Eric? Before we ask Audie to hit the stop record button in Ricardo's office. Okay, I guess you can hit the button, Audie.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, thanks, Eric.